Impressive.
This needs to stop now.
What's up, guys? I'm gonna go ahead and start off this video by saying that we just broke 1,000 followers over on Twitch. So if you guys want to go and check me out, I'll put the link somewhere on the screen and it'll be in the description below. I'm probably even live right now, who knows? So let's go ahead and get started with this guide. I will go over some of the key things here. So this would be Azerite traits, stat priority, and talents, and PvP talents. And I'll probably follow it up with some gameplay. So let's go ahead and start off with Azerite traits. Right now, I am running Crushing Assault, and the reason why we are going... Well, I went Crushing Assault. I know people tend to run other builds. The most success I've seen this season is with Crushing Assault and Lord of War, and since Lord of War is out the window ever since they nerfed it, just this past, I think, 2 days? The 24th? Yeah, two days ago they nerfed it. On top of that, they nerfed Defensive Stance. So, I mean, defensive stance is obviously going to be okay. It just requires a little bit more stance dancing and knowing when to do your damage, right? So that doesn't really affect us a whole lot. The only thing that does affect us is the Lord of War nerf, which was 40%. It is now 55%. So that kind of makes us have to change Azerite traits when it comes to arms PvP. And what I tend to run now is Crushing Assault. It basically hits roughly 10 to 15k. So basically, it's like what Lord of War used to hit for. The problem, it's not, obviously, it's not no Lord of War where it's just you pop Warbreaker and then boom, everybody just gets hits for like 20% of their health, 30% of their health on a critical even. So I'm running this build. It's very, very strong in my opinion. I've had really good success with this so far this season. I like it in playing Thunder. Thunder is very good for this trait because you know how they have random Earth Shock damage that just happens to proc multiple times. Well, you could swap a healer using this build. This build, when you have a proc and the LA Shaman's ready to go and you guys are communicating your goes, you can definitely have a one-shot potential on a healer who isn't expecting it. And that can be led by a Stormbolt following into all of your damage and even the LA's damage. This can be ran with Turbo. There's a single target version of this spec that I'm running I will get into shortly. And this is what I like to run. I love this build a lot. So that covers my Azerite traits, my main ring here. The second utility ring, I like to go for defensive traits here because Warrior doesn't really have a whole lot of defensive ability other than defensive stance and die by the sword. So in there you kind of want to get some defensive traits. And the problem with this is I only have a 330 for my helmet, and I'm trying to get a 340 plus, and so far I've been having horrible luck. So even on my shoulders, I've got Azerite veins. So basically, this is some good. When this procs, it's pretty decent healing over 18 seconds. It's not quite what it is 5100 in PvE. In PvP, it's obviously a little bit less. I think it's like what 1500 a tick every what almost 3 seconds. I think that's pretty decent, especially if you're sitting defensive stance. It's good to mitigate some damage here and there. I use Impassive Visage. Obviously, it doesn't hit what it says it does in PvP. It says just when I take damage, it heals me for this amount, and then it won't occur for like it occurs like every 6 seconds. So again, it's very defensive. It adds up. It helps. This also ties into with no other better traits in this ring. I can actually stack some critical strike here, and this ties into my stat template of what I run with this build. So I'm aiming for more one-shot potential. So when I get these slam procs, I have a higher chance to crit. So since I have 25% crit, it lets me, like, almost every time I have a proc, it's almost like a guaranteed crit, basically. So I like to have, a crit trait that adds up. So this is like roughly 250, 350 actually, up to 5 times. Like in total is what I mean. Sorry. So those are my Azerite traits. My stat template is obviously very leaning heavy towards a critical strike. I have a little bit of haste because obviously a little bit of haste helps. I don't stack any versatility or any avoidance or any speed. Obviously you want to still build into mastery, obviously. I would have had at least 185%, but I stacked a little bit on my mastery to test out more crit strike. This also ties into my trinkets as well. I'm running a crit trinket. I would like to run the Alliance Roar trinket. If you guys don't know what that is, I'll show you really quick. It's on the war front that cycles, I believe, every week between Horde and Alliance. And basically what this trinket does is an on-use critical strike trinket of 1381, and it decreases by 230 every 3 seconds. So for warrior, this can be very good. When you have on-demand damage, avatar, Colossus Smash, you get a slam proc when you enter in combat. Obviously, you're basically going to get a guaranteed crit. And like I said, this is very good for Turbo. This is very good for DH Warrior. Very good, very, very good for Thundercleave. Very strong. It adds a lot of one-shot potential. So on a critical, this would probably hit roughly 40 to 50k in PvP. So that should cover my stat priority and Azerite traits for right now. These are my talents that I'm running. I'm running War Machine. A lot of people ask me in stream, why do I run War Machine over Sudden Death or Skull Splitter? Anyway, why I run War Machine is because it's basically Legion Dauntless it's nerfed Legion Dauntless. Basically, my auto attacks generate 10% more rage. The second buff is killing an enemy instantly generates 10 range and increases movement speed by 30%. Obviously not good in arenas, right? I understand that, but like I said, I love it for the Dauntless. That it's basically Dauntless is pretty much what I'm getting at here, and I like it a lot. Why I run this over Sudden Death? Sudden Death was just recently nerfed on the 22nd or 23rd. Basically, you can no longer death sentence, charge, execute people while they are above 20% health if you have a Sudden Death proc, basically making it useless. And that's a feels bad right there. Kind of nerfs our mobility a lot. But that's okay. It's not going to hurt us. Reason why I don't take Skull Splitter is that it is a 20-second cooldown, roughly 20-second cooldown. The damage is obviously decent, but the problem that I have with this is it only generates 20 rage. The damage is okay, but again, it's an extra global you would have to spend somewhere in your damage rotation, and to me that feels very clunky, and I do not like it, especially since it only gives 20 rage, and let's just say that it's about roughly 1 rage per second. 20 rage, 20-second cooldown. War Machine, you will definitely get more rage in the time that it takes for this cooldown to be back up. So even then, you just kind of slam more globals. I hardly ever take double time. Double time is kind of useless now. It serves no purpose unless you happen to want to tunnel healers, in which this case, not a lot of comps can just run at healers anymore. This is BFA. If you want a comp that can run at healers, I suggest playing Kitty Cleave with a Paladin. This could be very good for that, but I often don't even take this anymore. I don't even look at it. It's kind of just it's just there. We don't really need it. Impending Victory, I sometimes actually do use this. The self heal is very good if it's versus comps that do a lot of damage and the healer needs a little bit of help. This can come in handy. It's just an instant 20% heal, does a little bit of damage, 30-second cooldown, only costs 10 rage. I like this. I use it sometimes, like I said, not always, but sometimes. Stormbolt, obviously it's always your go-to. It's a free stun. I get that it's no longer 30-yard range like it used to be in Warlords and early Legion. It is now 20 yards, but that's okay. Ever since they nerfed that, the range on it, they did extend the stun effect by 1 second, so I guess that is okay. Massacre isn't always must-have, but to me, I like this spec a little bit more with Fervor of Battle. I'll get into that in a second. Massacre, it's just high execute. That's all what it is. So 35% execute. It is buffed. It used to be Death Row of 25% execute, but it is now 35%. You're basically a Shadow Priest. Fervor of Battle, I like this versus melee cleaves a lot because basically this talent is a beauty. This talent is affected by sweeping strikes and collateral damage. Now, I will get into that here in a second. Whirlwind deals 10% increased damage, kind of irrelevant, but this slams your primary target, okay? Now, since this is affected by sweeping strikes and you have sweeping strikes up versus a melee cleave, you will hit both of them for Whirlwind and Slam. Now, this is also decent in its own way because Whirlwind, it is an 8-yard radius that basically makes your slam ranged. Even if you get one tick on somebody on your primary target, like, let's for example, a mage. If you're able to hit a mage and he blinks away, the slam will still register and hit him. To me, that's pretty good. I like that a lot. So I've been using this a lot. I haven't really swapped off it too much, even versus mages and stuff like that, since a lot of people just tend to hit the rogue a lot more. It's pretty decent. Rend, you could play the long game versus RMP, since RMP is very, very popular right now, ever since they are nerfing all the counters recently. Basically, you just apply this. It's not like Legion Rend. They did extend the time on it, I believe from 7 to 8 seconds to 12 seconds now. it's okay. It's not the best. It's only good for when you know that you're not going to be able to connect to the target sometimes, and the damage is still there. It's ticking. You just have a constant damage that's always just there, nagging at your target. Second win, this is useless. Bounding stride, useless. Defensive stance, your best friend, literally your best friend. You will always be in this when you get tunneled. Even looked at. If you get looked at, you better be in this. This will help you. This will save you. This mitigates so much damage. It's basically a Resto Druid's Iron Bark, alright? It's beautiful. It's your best friend. Collateral damage. When your abilities damage a second target due to sweeping strikes, they refund 20% of their rage cost. This is very, very, very good versus melee cleaves. You do not need Warbreaker for this because, like I said, sweeping strikes is all single target damage that will hit a second nearby enemy. So if you have sweeping strikes up, your Colossus Smash will hit 2 people, not 1 but 2. So there's no reason to run Warbreaker versus most melee cleaves because you can just sweeping strikes and then boom, Colossus Smash. Now see, the reason why I like this is that Colossus Smash is a 45-second cooldown and sweeping strikes is a 30-second cooldown. So you always have sweeping strikes up when you have Colossus Smash ready to go versus melee cleaves. So it always pretty much lines up. Warbreaker, obviously, it's just Warbreaker. It's AoE. It's just there. It exists. You just apply it to everything and you go hammy with Blade Storm. Pretty much if you're just going for ultimate cleave damage, there you go. Cleave, it's no longer what it used to be in Legion. The amount of targets that you hit with Cleave, it buffs your roll-in damage by 20%. It's no longer a thing anymore. What this is, new Cleave, it basically costs 20 rage. It's an 8-second cooldown. Hit all enemies in front of you with a sweeping attack for 3.6k physical damage. Hitting 3 or more targets inflicts deep wounds. Basically useless, not that good. I seriously could not find a single reason why I would ever take this talent. It's useless in its own, it's just completely useless. Alright, in for the kill. I see a lot of people running in for the kill over Avatar sometimes, especially if they are stacking haste. Obviously, haste is very, very important in an expansion where they add global cooldowns to literally everything. You want to have faster globals. I totally understand. It's Blizzard, why? Anyway, when you Colossus Smash, it increases your haste by 10% or 20% if the target is below 20% health. It lasts 10 seconds, so basically the same duration as Colossus Smash. I don't like this because I don't stack haste. I used to stack haste, but I wasn't that big of a fan of it. I get the faster globals and things like that, but I always value crit more since critting actually means something now. Crit is literally guaranteed to double your damage. So having high crit, even though it is reduced effectiveness in PvP, it will still double your damage. Avatar, obviously, like they just buffed this. They buffed this going into BFA. It now generates 20 rage, and again, it's a minute and a half cooldown, flat 20% damage increase. It removes all roots and snares. Very, very good. Very good. Deadly Calm reduces the rage cost of your abilities by 100% for 6 seconds. It's a 1-minute cooldown. Basically, in other words, it's useless. Anger Management, I am actually in love with this ability. I am absolutely in love with this ability, especially with the spec that I'm running. It costs a lot of rage, but with collateral damage, you actually get your Colossus Smashes back in roughly 30 seconds or so to make it line up with that Sweeping Strikes. It's very good. In my opinion, I think it's the best of the three. In my honest opinion, a lot of people, I believe, still run Dreadnought. There's other builds that you can run with Dreadnought, like the Executioner's Precision build. It does take a lot of setup, though, especially when you're relying on RNG-based procs like Sudden Death to kick in for Executioner's Precision to work to set up Mortal Strike one-shots. But to me, I like Anger Management. It's very, very good. Just, again, always having those faster Blade Storms, or not faster Blade Storms, quicker Blade Storms off the cooldown, and Colossus Smash off the cooldown, very important. Basically, you have more damage. You get more damage back quicker. Those are your cooldowns. You know, Blade Storm does damage now. Colossus Smash, it's a cooldown. They basically replaced Recklessness with Colossus Smash cooldown, and that's pretty much it. Dreadnought Overpower has 2 charges that increases the damage of your next Mortal Strike by an additional 10%, so it's up to a maximum of 60%. Again, I don't really like it. I don't really much care for it. I liked having Colossus Smash back sooner and Blade Storm back sooner. Ravager, this is nerfed. I am literally known to run this build. I loved Ravager so much, especially when I played TSG. This build was very, very strong. It set up some wonky, crazy one-shots, but in my opinion, I no longer think this is going to be viable. It technically could, if played correctly, maybe with the right Azerite traits and good amount of crit, and the good setup that you could have maybe with a Resto Druid and a DK still, it may be viable, but it is nerfed on its damage. It does 25,000, normal Bladestorm does 32,000, so it's nerfed by a little bit. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get into PvP talents here. Obviously, the number one is going to be Sharpened Blade. I don't know a single person who would ever spec out of Sharpened Blade. This is incredibly important. Even though it did get nerfed, it is no longer 30% increased damage. It is now 15, but that's okay. That's not our main damage right now. Our Mastery is our main damage, and Slam Spec is our main damage at the moment for me. So that doesn't bother me too much. The healing reduction is still the same. It's still Big Mortal Strike, 50% reduced healing taken. Very, very good. Death Sentence, I am quickly finding this to become a lot less useful than what it used to be in Legion. Then again, I could be wrong, because the control that Frost Mages have this expansion is absolutely disgusting and ridiculous. But ever since they nerfed Death Sentence again, you can no longer execute while rooted, and that always felt like a bug to me, but that's okay. I can live without it. Especially when we're tunneling rogues a lot more now. So I tend to opt out of this. I don't use this as much. I actually use War Banner quite often. War Banner is always like it's always going to be good, especially since they buffed the range of War Banner. So I run War Banner pretty much against RMP. Anything that has any like CC, I could pretty much just get out of Death Sentence, run War Banner always, and then have like disarm versus melee teams, like anything. So I run War Banner a lot. I don't know why I'm even specting the Death Sentence right now, but it can be useful sometimes, but not always, ever since the nerf. Bladestorm, I actually kind of use this sometimes. It reduces the cooldown on my Bladestorm by 33%, and now it applies mortal wounds to everything that I hit. So, I mean, obviously, like, I use this sometimes. It's actually pretty good with anger management. You can actually cut Bladestorm down to a 45-second cooldown using anger management with that talent. So it could be good for like RBGs and stuff like that, but I do not do RBGs. Just a little bit of theory crafting here.
Getting offline, guys. Later.
And that'll be it for the Warrior PvP guide for ARMS. If there's enough people that want me to make a Fury Warrior PvP guide, whether it comes to Azerite traits, talents, PvP talents, different 3s comps, or anything like that, I can definitely make one. It'll just take a little bit more time since I haven't played Fury at all this expansion, but I can definitely get that going if there's enough people that want to see that. If this guide has helped you in any way, and you want to show a little bit of support, feel free to subscribe. I will try to make more content when I can. If you guys want to check me out on Twitch, I'm live every day, and I'll definitely see you guys there. Again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you again sometime soon.